everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com, and this is episode 37 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to be taking your questions that you have sent to me via email to charles@HumbleMechanic.com, and you also put question for Charles in the subject line so that I knew what your email was about. Before we get rolling in the show, I got a couple of things to talk to you guys about. First up, congratulations to the winner of the giveaway I did on Facebook last weekend. I gave away a $50 Walmart card, a bar of lava soap, and a lava soap hat, thanks to the awesome folks at Lava Soap. I also have 2 more of those packs to give away, so I'm going to be doing something special on a couple other platforms here really soon. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, but I promise you it'll be cool, and I'm giving them both away. So chance to win a $50 gift card is never a bad thing, I don't think. Also, a few people have been asking me about sponsorship. A video should be launching this week where I talk all about sponsorships and what I'm looking for and what some of the criteria for sponsors are. So be on the lookout for that. I'll also be emailing you guys that have asked me about it privately and letting you know what's going on there. Now, I got my laptop up, so let's get into your questions. First up, Joe asks, hey man, do I have any VW buying tips? Buying a used Jetta or Golf and don't want to miss anything. Love the channel, by the way. Thanks, Joe. All right, yeah, my big Volkswagen buying tip is if you don't know what you're looking for, please, please, please take it to somebody that does. This is a question that I get asked all the time. You know, I'm looking at one of 2 cars. What do I buy? Honestly, I don't know. I'm not looking at the car, so I can't tell you which one to buy. I can tell you that traditionally, if you're looking between a B5 Passat and an A5 Jetta, you're probably going to have more problems with the Passat. 1, they're older, and 2, those cars were pretty intense on repair costs. So now, trust me, I drive one, I know. Depending on the generation of Jetta, suspension bushings are really common, axle boots are really common, oil leaks are common. Of course, you always want to look at maintenance things, but Joe, honestly, man, if you don't know, please take it to somebody that does. I always recommend taking it to the dealer for stuff like this. I know a lot of you guys are pretty hard on dealerships, and some of them have earned their reputation, but you know, they know the cars really well. Or if it's an independent European shop, please take it there. Just get someone to put their eyes on it that's really familiar with that generation of Volkswagen, and you know, don't get taken advantage of. It's worth $100. Now, if you're buying a $1,000 car, so what? It'll be what it's going to be. But if you're spending, you know, $4,000 up, please take it somewhere that knows what they're looking at and have them do a full inspection. We call it a used car pre-purchase inspection, but you don't want to just wing it and guess wrong or something like that. So good question, and again, please take it to the dealership. Next up, hey Charles, in your time-lapse video, you mentioned evacuating oil from the new 1.8 turbos. I assume you're talking about the one with a plastic oil pan. Why do I do this? At our shop, our mechanics don't do that. Lucas Z. That's actually not the one with the plastic oil pan. That's the 2-liter GTIs and the Golfs. Actually, I think the 1.8 turbo Golf has a plastic oil pan too, or maybe it's the diesel. Anyway, so far I've only seen plastic oil pans in the Golf. But even though on that specific vehicle, which was a Passat, that I was using the evacuator on, I bought it because of those plastic oil pans. When I first seen that, I was very concerned about mostly the longevity of using just like a 1/4 turn drain plug in a composite pan with an O-ring holding the oil in, basically. So far, they've proven to be okay as maintenance goes. I'm still very concerned about it, very leery about it. But I did find that evacuator works incredibly well on the 1.8 turbos, the newest generation, as well as that newest generation of 2-liter turbo. On the older 2-liter turbo, the one that everybody calls the TSI, it's okay. It's all right in the FSI. It works pretty good on the diesel. I should do a review of this thing for you guys because it's actually a great tool to have. The older stuff I've never tried. A lot of older cars, the oil filter's on the bottom, and if I have to put it up in the air anyway for doing an oil change, there's no point in me using the evacuator. The oil pans on the one I was using it on can be a little finicky with the crush washer, so I like to do it on those. And don't worry guys, the car still goes up in the air for an inspection and a tire rotation specifically on that one. I'll put a link to that, the evacuator that I'm talking about if you guys haven't seen it in the time lapse. In the show notes. It's a great little tool. I like it for like 120 bucks or whatever. I recommend it. Definitely not something you need, but something that's worth having. All right, next up, Ryan asks, I would love to see a video or blog post on what camera/production equipment I use in my video. I think they're great quality. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that, man. Just curious what I use. Okay, so quick rundown. I use an EOS Rebel T3i camera, which is a DSLR. It's not really even a video camera, but it shoots really good video. There's a little quirk with it where it'll only shoot up to 12 minutes of video. I guess that has to do with the amount of data that it's storing at one time. It's on a Sunpack Ultra Pro 423 tripod, which is mediocre. It's got like a pistol pan head on it that I don't really like. It's kind of weak, but it's fine. I start and stop all the videos with this little Canon remote. I actually just figured out that I can also focus the camera with the remote as well as start and stop video. So if you ever see me like kind of doing this, it's because I have this remote in my hand. I think the best two things I've done to improve video quality is all around here there's lighting. I got a light here, and a light right above. So that you can really see me or what I'm talking about. It works really well for the failed parts videos. I also use a microphone, which, let me dig it out. Here is an Audio-Technica Omni Mic ATR 3350. It was like a $30 microphone. It's kind of a pain in the butt because it's a really long cord, but I think it records really well. And it's just a little lapel mic right here. I like it. I use Cyberlink video editor, which is pretty good, not great. I think there's some better editors out there, but for the budget that I have for editing these videos, it's about the best I can do. I do plan on upgrading the audio. One of the negatives of recording with this EOS Rebel camera is for some reason in the software of the camera, the gain is shot way up. So if I just record without editing, it's very scratchy sound. You'll notice like early in the show, the audio was really scratchy and there was a ton of background noise. Actually, thanks to Jason from Engineering Explained for pointing that out to me because I never heard it. So I actually run it through an editor and clean all that up. But I'm actually looking for something with a little bit better sound. So I'll probably switch to a standalone audio recorder at some point. But that's like $400 that I don't really want to spend right now since I think this is doing a pretty good job of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, I'm out here in the garage. I'll throw a screenshot up of what it looks like sort of from behind the camera. For a while I had my wife helping me focus the camera, but ever since I figured out I could do it with the remote, thank you YouTube, I've just been able to fly solo on it, which is really cool that I don't have to bother her to help me all the time. So yeah, man, great question. Really appreciate you you wondering about that. That's cool. Hopefully that helps. If you got any other questions about the production or what I do, go ahead and post it in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer them. But I got a pretty simple setup, at least as simple as I can have. So next up, Jeff, who snuck in like 8 questions. So I'm going to pound through these and see what I can get for you. A couple of things he wanted to talk to me about for Monday's show. First, what's my opinion on the engine oil service being at 10K on the TSI? All right, Jeff, I've talked about it a couple times before, but oil, no problem. It holds up fine. Filter, it's okay. I've seen some filters in the 2.5s that are really brittle after 10,000 miles. We got to remember that a lot of us in the automotive enthusiast world take really good care of our cars and are very dedicated on point with our services. If it's at 10,000, we do them at 10 or 9. But a lot of people aren't that way. So they'll take a 10,000 mile service and push it to 12. Well, every time you push it out further and further, you open the door for more issues. There's also the things that aren't oil related, such as brakes and tires and things like that. Now we're stretching out the time that these things are inspected. So, you could have an issue where, let's say with your brakes at, your 40,000 mile mark, maybe you have 4 millimeters, which is a good amount of brake pad left, and you go 10,000 or 11,000 miles. Well, now in the meantime, your pad is cut into the rotor, where if that were every 5, we could have replaced the pad, resurfaced the rotors, saved you a bunch of money on a brake job. So good question, and that's a question I'll probably always answer no matter how many times I get it. He's got a couple more here. That's specific to his car. Jeff, I'll answer that one too. A while ago, he had asked me about shifting of the subframe and if that's a common problem. What seems to happen is early on in the A platform, like the A5 and B6 platform cars, we found that the torque wasn't right on the suspension bolts. So what we would do is you just get a big old breaker bar and crank down on them and tighten them up, and that would stop any, forward and back shifting of the subframe. Those bolts are technically supposed to be replaced every time they're loosened, so if you have to loosen that for an alignment to shift the subframe, they are supposed to be replaced. They are torque to yield bolts. I promise you that very few get replaced during that kind of thing, but by the Volkswagen book, they're definitely supposed to be replaced. There's also other things that can cause subframe shifting, but the most common one that I've found is those bolts being a little looser than maybe they should be. And, there's times to pay very close attention to torque specs, especially on torque to yield. But I have found that if you go in with a wrench or a ratchet and really tighten them down a little bit more, that shifting will go away. Good. That's a good question, though. Next, he asked me, what do I need to do after changing a battery? I mentioned that I may have to set the anti-pinch. I think I mentioned that in another video. Can I show how to do that? That really depends. And he also asked, what else do I need to do in replacing the battery? So set your clock, set pinch protection, and that's really it on the more modern ones. And he drives the 13 GTI, so on your car, that's all you got to worry about. If the battery is unplugged for a really long time, you may need a radio code, but that's very, 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 very infrequent. So on your car, Jeff, to set the pinch protection, with the driver's door open, double tap the unlock button on the remote, then hold the driver's window button down. That'll lower all the windows, and then double tap the unlock button and hold the driver's window button up, and that'll raise all the windows. That's the easiest way on your car. Or if you replace the battery with the windows up, it doesn't usually lose pinch protection. On cars like my Passat, which is a 2005, you can take the key in the door handle and rotate it all the way, lower the windows by turning it one way, and then raise all the windows by turning it the other, and that'll reset the pinch protection. But yours has pinch protection on all the windows. That's just one thing to check after you replace a battery, and make sure that your windows auto up and auto down. If they do that, your pinch protection is set and you're good to go. Great questions, man. Jeff always sends good questions, so keep on sending them, Jeff. I appreciate it. All right, Don said, so Don is the one that asked me last week about the WRX versus the Golf R. I'm very happy to say that he chose the Golf R. Don, that's awesome, man. I'm very excited about it. I'm fully expecting you to post some pictures of it on the Facebook page, and I'd love to share that with everybody. So I'm super excited for your Golf R. And I know the folks at Subaru are probably really sad, but they'll get over it because the Golf R is awesome. All right, Kevin asked, 2 short questions. I'm going to buy a set of triple square bits to work on my car. What size triple square most used on VWs? He's got a 12 Passat. And are triple square fasteners everywhere or just certain places like suspension areas? Okay, great question. So triple square is just a specific kind of bit that Volkswagen uses a fair amount of. And they're all over the car, Kevin. I know the door latches have a small triple square. If it's a diesel, it's got triple squares. The rear brakes, the bolts that hold the caliper carriers, those use triple square. I'm trying to think what else. Some transmission bolts are triple square. In the suspension, there are triple squares. Usually the bolt that holds the knuckle to the strut is a triple square. I think the rear wheel bearing bolt might be a triple square. Anyway, they're all over the car, so good call on buying a set. The most common sizes are 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14, and 16, and 18. I think that's pretty much the full array on that specific car. I can tell you that 6, 8, and 10 are the sizes that I keep in my roll cart. So those are probably the most common ones. Like the bolt that holds a steering wheel on is a 12. So that's not a very common one, but I think it's VIN makes a really good set that I use a lot of. I'll try and find a link to it for you, Kevin, and put that in the show notes. And it has the whole set. It's a little set of all of them, and I actually recommend those. I've been using it for years and years and years, and I've never broken one, at least not yet anyway. So good question, Kev. Thank you for that. Sorry, Kevin, I called you Kev. I got a buddy named Kevin, and I always call him Kev. So, Kevin, I'm sorry about that. Brian asks, hey, Charles, excellent on the videos. Thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate that. The GTI water pump episode was his introduction to Humble Mechanic podcast, and hooked ever since. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Many GTI owners on golfmark6.com have commented about black soot on the exhaust tips being normal. So he's got a couple questions about exhaust soot on the exhaust tip. Is it truly normal for a stock car? is a black soot, symptomatic of a rich condition, fuel not being burned, and would upgrading to a stage 1 tune reduce or eliminate the soot problem by making a better air-fuel ratio? Honestly, I don't want to say it's normal, but it's common. Pretty much all of the 2-liter turbos seem to have that soot built up on the exhaust tip. And it could very well be a product of a slightly rich condition. The thing we got to remember on, the modern day tuned cars, and he specifically mentions PZEV, which is partial zero emissions, or PLEV, which is partial low emissions. These cars are designed to run leaner than richer. So if you're going to have a condition, it's probably more likely a lean condition rather than a rich condition. My guess, depending on mileage, is probably oil coming through the combustion chamber and out the exhaust, and then sort of catching on the tips of the tailpipe. It does seem to be very common though, and I'll tell you what I'll do, Brian. I'm going to look around and pay a little bit closer attention over the next couple weeks, and maybe come back and talk to you about it. I might even reach out to a contact of mine at Volkswagen and see if he has any insight to that, because that's actually something I'm curious about too. Really good question. And as far as the tune, I don't think it would eliminate the soot problem. It will change your air-fuel ratios, but I don't think it will alleviate any soot. In fact, it'll probably run richer, but maybe that will. I don't really know, man. That's a question that I really don't have a full answer to, but it's a really good one. So I'm going to reach out to some people and ask around and see if I can get you a better answer than I just gave you, because the truth is I really don't know 100% for sure. I will say that one thing may affect that. You might want to look at what kind of fuel you're using. If you're using mid-grade, maybe try cleaning the exhaust tips and running a tank or two of premium just to see how that works out. Luckily, gas is pretty cheap right now. I think it's under $2 a gallon where I'm at. So now might be a really good time to run that test and see if you get any improvement in that, or whether it still does just the same thing. But man, Brian, great question. Thank you. All right, Jacob asks, he's got a MK1 Caddy pickup, and I want to do something fun with it, but I also want to be friendly with the wife and her needs. Jacob, you are a smart man, my friend. Excellent, excellent choice. She can't drive stick, and she's not that great. Ooh, Jacob. So she can't drive stick shift, and we'll leave it at that. I don't want to get Jacob in trouble. Jacob says that he loves you very much, and you're an incredible person. So you want basically what he wants to do is put a more modern engine in his Caddy, his Caddy pickup truck. Pretty much do an interior swap. He likes the VR6 option, but it might be more expensive. So maybe a 1.8 turbo with an automatic. Point is, he has never seen anyone do an engine swap with an automatic transmission. Okay, so the Eurowise kit is built for a manual transmission. I don't know if it will work with an automatic. And he even says nobody really does automatic swaps. That's really true. Most people that are doing engine swaps are doing them for a really sport type idea or an enthusiast idea. And honestly, most of us auto enthusiasts don't love automatic transmissions. Man, I think you should probably scrap the project and just send your Caddy over to me and let me have it, and I'll put a cool engine in it and just keep it. But of course, Jacob, I'm kidding. Unless you really want to do that, then definitely send it. That's a really good question. I would probably poke around in VW Vortex and see if anybody's done it. I think a 1.8 turbo with an automatic could be a really fun swap. And that's a whole lot of power upgrade in a Caddy pickup. You can also look at like an ALH automatic swap. I know automatic Jetta diesels are beginning to be pretty affordable, and because most everybody that's buying diesel now wants a manual transmission, especially for engine swap. You might be able to score an automatic Jetta pretty cheap and try and do the swap. This would be at like out of an A3 platform Jetta. That would probably be the most bolt-in. Let me reach out to Mike from Eurowise or one of the boys over there and ask them their thoughts on it, and maybe I can get an answer for you a little bit more specifically. It probably would take a fair amount of fabrication. I know there's a lot of guys doing 1.8 turbo swaps in that generation vehicle, and I think Eurowise actually does make a engine mount for that. But as far as the transmission goes, man, I don't know. But I think you should do it. I think it's very cool. And if you do it, let me know, and I'd love to post pictures of it on the blog or on the Facebook page. Guys, wow, I feel like these last two in a row I don't really have great answers for. A couple of things you want to consider when it comes to the automatic transmission is what's going to happen with wheel speed. Depending on what transmission you use, that's going to be really important. You're eliminating ABS, so that eliminates that. If I were going to do, I'll tell you what I would do, Jacob. If I were going to do an automatic engine swap, I'd probably do an ABA with an automatic transmission out of a car that didn't have ABS. And that would be like a 96 Golf, a Cabrio would probably be a really good one. I think that's going to be the easiest swap for you to do, and it'll limit, basically the newer the vehicle gets, the more sensors and inputs you have to worry about. If you had to do any of that, you'd need to have all that stuff coded out. So great question, Jacob. Thank you for getting your wife involved, man. That's really cool. Good looking out for her. That's as a husband myself, that's a really good choice to keep mama happy. But keep us posted on what you do, man. If you get a plan together and want my advice on it, just fire me another email, or if you wind up starting out on it, post it up on the Facebook page so that we can all follow your progress on it. So good question, man. Next up, Alan says he's got a MK1 Jetta and he's got trouble with first gear and reverse gear, but the synchros are okay. What can it be? All right, Alan, good question. That's a tough one to answer without knowing more. A problem with first gear and reverse, I don't really know what that means. Is it that it doesn't go into first or reverse? It doesn't come out of first and reverse? The transmission doesn't engage first and reverse, even though the shifter will go into first and reverse? Initially on this question, and this sort of comes from me dealing with some shifter issues from the Caddy, it's probably a shifter adjustment. This is a Mexican Jetta, so I assume it's the same as the Caddy. It's probably an adjustment either on the transmission or on the shifter. I don't really know without looking at it. I know as the generations evolve, and on my Caddy specifically, I had a lot of problems getting the shifter adjusted to where I could get it into reverse. You want to make sure that all of the bushings in the shifter are good, both in the shifter and at the transmission. If they're not good, you want to rebuild all that stuff. I think Euro Tuning sells rebuild kits with all the bushings in it. It's one that I had looked at on the Caddy before I did the engine swap, because that shifter was flopping all around. That's kind of what my gut says, is that you got either a bushing worn out or missing, or an adjustment that's out, and you want to start with that. But start with a really good visual inspection before you just start slapping parts on it, and really take a good look at it and go from there. And that actually brings me to a really good point about diagnosing cars and looking vehicles over and trying to figure out what's going on with your car before you replace any parts, unless it's obviously bad. So if your tire's flat and there's a shiv sticking out of the side of the tire, replace the tire. But if you're having a problem with like the vehicle starting, or making a weird noise, or anything really, do a little bit of initial diagnostic first. And that usually starts off with a really good visual inspection. And a lot of times it's hard to know, okay, this is good, this is bad, just by looking at it. But I'll tell you that just shining a flashlight on a part sometimes can give away what's going on. If you have, let's say, a fault for a coolant temp sensor, and you shine your flashlight down on it and the wires are broken, well, there may not be a need to put a sensor in it because the wires are broken. So, when it comes to vehicle diagnosis, really start with a good basic visual inspection. And hey, if you don't know what it's supposed to look like, a really good tip is to hop on a website that sells parts. Hop on DeutschAutoparts.com and check out the picture of what the part's supposed to look like, and see if what you have going on looks just like that. And if it doesn't, well, you may have a problem with the part. If it does, keep looking. Follow the harness back through the engine bay, or up through the wheel well, whatever you're looking at. But do some initial diagnostic and visual inspection before you just go replacing parts. It's one thing that I see and hear about a lot, where I'll get an email saying, hey, I got this problem with the car. I've replaced these 10 parts and it's still doing it. Well, some of those parts may have needed to be replaced for maintenance, but this part's not going to really cause the vehicle not to start or, not to engage first gear. You wouldn't want to put just slap a transmission in a car before you, for not going into first gear before you did some visual inspection and checked it out. So Alan, I'm not picking on Alan at all. This is a really good question, and again, I would start with a visual inspection on the bushings, but that's just in general. That's for the DIY folks, the really novice folks, the professional folks that sometimes act like dummies and and don't do visual inspections before they just go ripping things apart. Take a minute, take a breath, shine your flashlight on it, and take a really good look at what's going on, and use your brain a little bit. You may not be an automotive repair expert, but a lot of times you don't have to be. A lot of times just a simple visual inspection and thinking about what's going on will really lead you in the right direction and get you guys where you want to be. So good question, Alan. Thank you for that. And thanks for setting me up with a way to sort of talk about that, because it's been something that's been on my mind a little bit lately, and I wanted to make sure I brought that up in a show, and Alan gave me a road to do that. So anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. As always, if you have any questions or comments about the show, please post them in the comments section below. Don't forget, if you like the video, throw it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. You can also subscribe to my videos on YouTube or on the blog. And hey, if you liked it, hit the share button. I always appreciate that. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, obviously, and on the blog at humblemechanic.com. Again, if you want to have a question answered on a show like this, shoot me an email to charles@humblemechanic.com. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.